Yo guys, and welcome back for another Blue Protocol Star Resonance video. So you might notice that we look a bit different here, and the reason for that is because we were invited to join the Season 2 test server early, so that way I can make some content for you guys and put it out before Season 2 starts. If you are trying to avoid spoilers, definitely skip this and our other Season 2 videos we're going to be coming out with. We're going to have information on cosmetics, gear progression, how the seasonal model works, and stuff like that. So definitely skip this if you're trying to not have any spoilers, but otherwise we'll jump right into it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about gear progression. Now, part of this is going to seem very familiar to last season, but there's an important caveat to that we're going to go over in a moment here. But first, you guys notice we're actually over at the dungeon section over here. So what you'll see is that our normal dungeons are going to give us the 120 gear, hard dungeons are going to give us the 120 legendary gear, and then mastery mode we're going to start getting into at mastery 1 is going to give us 140 gear, with mastery mode 6 giving us the 160 gear. By the way, we do know when we're going to get the dungeons unlocked and you can start farming your legendary gear, and so that's going to show as you can see on the screen. On the 15th we get the Depths of Decay, the 17th we get the Rock Serpent Lair, the 20th we get the Wraith Shrine, the 23rd we get the Soundless City, the 26th we get the Devourer Cage, and the 29th we get the Illusory Moonveil Wilds. And so this is going to be the schedule at which you can, like I said, farm your level 120 legendary gear and weapons, and that can be found over here on the Blue Protocol official Discord. It's under the patch notes section. You can just kind of scroll down and get that information. So we don't know if it's going to be a staggered schedule or not for the raid bosses, but starting week 5 we will actually get access to the raid bosses. So hopefully it's not a staggered schedule like it is with the dungeons, but we'll have to ultimately wait and see. But this will hopefully allow you to plan accordingly. Notice how when we're looking at these dungeon drops, these other items change too. So we have 160 reforged stones, we have 140 reforged stones, and then of course our 120 reforged stones. But we also have some other materials and stuff here. So these are actually going to be how you actually can buy the transmog items without having to rely on the drop rates. So I know a lot of people were complaining about not having a pity for those drops. So like for this, for example, you farm this dungeon to get this item here. It will help you buy the glove specifically. And then this is a generic one that drops in any of the modes, but there is a limit to what you can farm in normal and hard, and then also in master 1 through 5. But then at mastery 6, there's no longer a drop rate limit for this, and you can farm to your heart's content. So this is going to be how you're actually going to go about getting these pieces. There should be an image up above, just kind of showing how much these things cost, just so you can kind of get a rough feel for that. So when it does come to the raid drop, so this is going to be pretty important as always for crafting your raid pieces. So you see that in the easy mode here we have access to our 140 shards. So this is the shards you're going to need to craft 140 gear, but you do have access to a few other things as well, and that does include these chests, similar to how we had access to in the nightmare mode versions of the previous season. So you can still farm the ocean weapon through this, and then these are going to be new items that you need for your weapon, as we'll see in a moment. So in the hard mode version we have access to the same level of 140 shards, but we also have access to this material here, which is the same material from this chest. And much like the previous version, this is going to be for our weapons. So this is going to be how you break through and you get your weapon from 140 and 160 into a 150 170 weapon. So breaking through your gear, I mentioned it here briefly, it's actually a new system that exists in the game altogether, and I'll talk about it more in depth later on in the video, but I just want to talk about it really quickly because basically it's the process of upgrading your gear. As I mentioned, when you have your 140 gear, 160 gear, you can upgrade it to 150 or 170. So it's just a process of upgrading your gear. It's not too complicated, and again, we'll check it out in more detail later on in the video. But we also have access to one more thing. This is going to be the material that you need to actually break through your gear and get your gear, your regular gear, up an additional 10 levels from 140 to 150, and so that will help you progress a little bit as well. When you do that, we'll go over the breakthrough process in a moment, but you will need these materials, and it does explain all that information here, but it increases the stats and stuff like that. Notice how you're still going to be getting 140 reforged stones, even though you can start progressing your gear to 150 and stuff like that, so they will continue to use those stones. And then when we get to nightmare mode here, the drops get a little more interesting. So again, we have the normal boxes that you can get. You have this new material that you can use to exchange for your 160 gear, and then again the same material for your weapon, upgrading those from 140 and 160 to 150 and 170. And then you have access to your regular glinting stellar cores for people that want to farm their ocean weapons as well. And then we have access to some more things. So this is going to be what you need to break through your gear, and this is going to work a little bit differently than the previous ones, and it's only going to go up by 5 instead of 10, so keep that in mind. But it's going to help you get to a maximum of 170. Again, your 160 gear will go to 170 with this piece here, and then these are actually going to be sigils, but essentially sigils are actually just drops that you can get from various sources, and you can use them essentially as your gems. So we'll go over that when we go into the gearing section a little bit more in a moment after the breakthrough section. But the point being is that you can actually get these as drops, and you can see they're kind of awesome. And so think of them as just like really, really good gems that you're going to be wanting to have access to. And so it's another reason to do these endgame activities. And then of course we also have the 160 reforged stones coming from nightmare mode. So that just kind of wrap it up for the raid loot. I think it'll be really interesting to see how these kind of play out and see what kind of drop rates they have. Again, it's not something I can test on the test server, unfortunately, but again, these look pretty powerful, right? So very strong, and I'm excited to see what kind of impact they have on our power late game. If you guys are enjoying the season 2 content, leave a like down below, comment on the video if you guys have any questions or anything that you guys want to see or want to know about season 2. Going to be more season 2 videos coming soon, and of course subscribe to the channel if you guys want to catch more of those videos. And back to the video. For our raid gear, we still have the same vendor, Cassie, over here. She's going to sell not only the new weapon material but also the regular set bonus pieces like before. So again, we have the 140 and the 160 pieces of gear, and so those will take different materials. You can see here we already have a bunch thanks to the server here, but then this material is used to craft the 160 gear. So same as before pretty much, but if you go down here, you'll actually see that there's something called gear breakthrough. Now, this is the part that's kind of interesting, and you'll see that I've already done it on my helmet here. So instead of being 140 like the rest of it, I actually use 20 of this material here that you can purchase from the honor coin shop each week. So this is also that material that you get from the hard mode raid. And then as you can imagine, to upgrade your level 160 gear to 170, you need the material from the nightmare mode that we mentioned earlier. And again, that is something that you can get from the honor coin shop, and it will allow you to upgrade your piece of gear correspondingly. So if I click on this, it actually says how many. So each breakthrough costs 20 and increases gear by 10 up to 150 maximum. So just like straight to the maximum here. And then later on, we'll actually get another material. This one right here, the Weaver Stardust. Again, you get it from the honor coin shop, but this allows you to use 25 and increase gear by 5 up to a maximum of 170. So this is going to be for your 160 gear, and you'll need to do this twice per gear in order to get to that 170 level. So you are actually going to be able to push your gear further on, but it does have a limitation on how much you can do. And you can see that if we go back to our gear breakthrough vendor, it's not like I can go and change this to a 160 gear or anything like that. I will need to recraft a helmet at 160 and then push it to 170. But it does give you a pretty substantial stat increase bonus, and you know, we're definitely going to be taking advantage of that. Okay, so the way that sigils work in this game, as I previously mentioned when we talking about the raid drops, is that they're essentially the new gems. And so we have this new vendor over here. Her name is Erica, and she's actually here to help us with a few things. We can recycle our current sigils, and that will give us more of these sigil shards. Later on in the video, we're actually going to go over the updated honor coin shop, which is kind of all the stuff, and you'll see that there are some of these sigil shards in there as well. And that's going to be something you want to do on a regular basis, because we can go over here and do the sigil exchange now, where you can buy either selection packs or random packs. Do keep in mind that the random box has the potential of giving you an even larger effect. So as you can see, this one right here is 500 crit, all elemental attack, haste, luck, mastery, and versatility. And so these are going to be very similar to a lot of what you're going to see here in a moment with these lower levels. But keep in mind, you know, with the lower rarities, of course, they're going to have less actual value to them, right? Only 200. Also, keep in mind too that some of these pieces go on different things. So for example, this sigil can be used on helmet, armor, gauntlets, and boots. But if we go down here and we look at one of these, we can see that these sigils can be used on bracelets left and right, and then also your charm. And in somewhere in the middle, you can see that roughly we have earrings, necklace, and rings. So of course, different ones are going to slot in different pieces. And so figuring out like what's going to be your best thing, probably just going to be based off your main stats, but you'll have the option and flexibility to pick whatever it is that you ultimately want. So for example, this guy here is the 200 crit compared to those other crit values that we saw. We have access to the same guy at the epic version, gives you 300, and then the legendary gives you 500. So it is quite a large upgrade between the purple and the yellow sigils. But again, you will have to kind of just random it from this chest here. Alternatively, you can try and farm them, and we'll go over that in a moment. And chances are probably not very good that you're going to get that, and you do have a possibility of getting even the blue ones down here. So ultimately, will it be worth gambling? Probably at some point in the late game, but maybe instead you just want to buy a decent set of selection chests and then just pick whichever ones you want before, and that way you can just gamba later on when you have nothing else that you realistically need. So let's go ahead and talk about how the honor coin shop has updated. So the honor coin shop has the new materials that you need. So this is going to be for purchasing the 120 gear from the vendor. This is going to be from purchasing 160 gear from the vendor. We also have access to our reforged stones, the 120, 140, and 160 here. And then of course our new materials that we have, along with our Dreamer Stardust and our Weaver Stardust here. Now, something I didn't mention in the store, but we need to talk about really quickly. If we go down to the honor coin shop and we take a look, you are going to see these Starforge crystals. Now, the honor coin shop now has these level 3 crystals. However, there's actually one important thing that maybe you probably want to know. So if we go here and look at the life skills exchange, what you're going to see is you can actually convert your level 1s into level 2s, and you can convert your level 2s into level 3s. So this is going to be something that you're going to want to know, and you're going to do this by using these Starforge conversion potions that you're going to make with alchemy, and this requires the grass. Players probably want to start stocking up on grass a little bit here and there, because you're going to want to be pushing a lot of these refinements, especially whale players, and they may not be ready for this level of grass requirement. However, there's another reason why you probably want grass, and that's just going to be for making the new materials, because you do need them as well. So you're going to be needing the willpower conversion potions here, and this is going to be used for making these battle will materials from season 2. So again, double the reason to need some grass. And that doesn't even include if you want to do any of the normal uses for grass, like doing the book exchange and stuff like that. And then of course we also have the sigil shards. So you don't actually need to go out and farm any of these sigils. You can also just get them from the honor coin shop and then just buy whatever it is that you want to buy. But that does kind of bring us to a good point about this whole sigil system. How do you get these and where are they from? So we can see that if you look at how to obtain it, so you just click on it, how to obtain, of course, you can see that you just get this from Monster Hunt. And so random mobs are just going to drop their sigils out in the world. And so you are going to want to farm some of these mobs, these season 2 mobs specifically. Even the elite ones and stuff like that do have access to these sigils that you can get. And then even the world bosses have access to, like Goblin King that we were looking at before that had the crit sigil, also drops theirs as well. So all these mobs in the open world are going to have their various sigils that drop from them just at a random chance. So you can farm them to some degree, but these are going to be rewards. They're not just drops, right? So if you look under the drops, there's not actually any sigils here. You do have to open the chest, at least for these ones. For these lower level mobs, that's not going to be the case. So you can see that this guy actually just straight up drops his sigil. And of course, they don't really have chests or anything anyway. They are going to be farmable to some extent, and you will be able to farm them to dismantle them and get their sigil pieces, but it is going to be a little bit of a grind if you're going to be farming these low level level mobs, I would imagine. Okay, so how exactly are we going to use those sigils that we either bought or got as a drop? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our same vendor here, Maxim. So this is the guy where you do your refinement and your reforging. We're just going to go ahead and embed and then go to a piece of gear we want to embed and see we have access to this sigil right here. And notice how we have access to the normal and advanced embedding methods. So you're just going to basically slot these in like the gems from season 1. And of course you have the option of spending more to try and get a higher value. This will probably scale even at the higher level sigils. And so those 500 point sigils from the legendary ones could be even more, and those red ones could be even more powerful as well that you get from the raid. So you're going to want to be ready for that when they do come out. Now, in order to actually embed these, we need these gem cores, and these are going to be made by Gemcrafters in season 2. One thing I do want to bring attention to is that if I were to go and embed different sigils, you'll see that the cost is actually different depending on the sigil that I choose to use. And so you do need to figure out which core it is, whether you need the ruby core or if you need a bunch of different cores. So like this one requires ruby, emerald, sapphires, and diamonds, right? So it really just depends on the sigil what it is that you're going to need. Now, I'm sure there's some way to determine, you know, what different gems you're going to need. However, at this point in time, I'm not actually sure how to determine that. So you will need to probably figure it out on the fly, or maybe at some point Maxroll will have just a cost list or something. I think it will probably just end up being the same. So I would imagine the higher level of the versatility would also take these. Maybe it has to do with the stats. It does seem to be that way, and versatility might just be the weird one-off. We have like the mastery one is just the yellow, the luck one is just the sapphire, the haste one seems to be just the emeralds, and the crit one seems to be just the rubies. And so my working theory is that the versatility one is the only one that requires all of them, but again, that's just a working theory and I don't know for sure. So we'll try and figure it out when the servers go live, and I'll maybe add a pinned comment to this video if I get that narrowed down. But I do think that my theory could be correct, so we'll have to wait and see. So you'll see here we have our sapphire gem core. This is what we need to slot in this piece here. And if you go to our master, you can see that this on the right should look pretty familiar from season 1, but this is going to be from season 2. And so we need the sapphire for this particular example. And if we go back and look, you can see there's a sapphire gem core level 2, which we're going to be using for higher level sigils. And so you can see if we go over here and we get a purple level sigil, we still use the gem core 1. I can only assume that the gem core 2s would be for like legendary or higher, but we'll have to ultimately wait and see. But luckily the gem core 1s are going to be enough for at least the purple level sigils. Though keep in mind you will need like 10 of them for only a single purple level sigil, and that's only for a certain role. If you want to try and roll for the potentially higher value, right, you're going to need multiple of these. And notice how the price actually goes up. Instead of needing the 10, you actually need 16. So it's going to be a lot more heavily focused on the Gemcrafters, I think, for season 2. I will thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I greatly appreciate it. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much. Hopefully you guys are excited about season 2. It should be coming out in a few days here. I know that I am. We're going to be around over on Twitch doing a lot of streaming during this content, getting multiple characters ready. I don't know if we're going to get all 6 ready for, you know, doing raids and stuff like that, but we're going to be getting some 120 legendary gear for sure on a bunch of them. So feel free to come by and hang out, doing a lot of dungeons probably in the next coming weeks. So like the video down below if you guys like the video, add a comment if you guys have any questions or anything else you guys want me to cover. We're gonna be having more season content coming soon, and subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.